Welcome to Pizza Quest. I'm Peter Reinhart for another exciting episode, and this one I'm especially excited about because we're with Wylie Dufresne, who is in the pizza game, and many of you know him already, but many of you may not. So I want to, welcome you, Wylie, and also we'll spend a little time just catching up for those folks that are not from New York or are not familiar with kind of your earlier body of work, which is substantial. I want to bring them up to date on that. And then want to spend the rest of the time talking about your new venture, Stretch Pizza, in New York City, which I know you're partnering with another old friend of ours, Gotti Peleg, who's from Bread's Bakery, who we've had on our bread symposium and things like that. So, Wylie, welcome to Pizza Quest.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Super excited to be here, and super excited to be in the pizza business. I'm having a lot of fun. So
I know. I mean, that's got to be a story. I mean, you went from essentially, a Michelin-starred restaurant creating, essentially out of the box food at WD-50. So we want to hear about that. But you had a life before that, even. And the one thing that we do have in common is you're from Providence, Rhode Island, and I spent some important years in my Johnson and Wales career at the Providence campus. So maybe you talk a little bit about that, but can you bring us up to date a little bit about your journey, how you ended up going from, fine dining and getting into fine dining. And also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't you like study philosophy in college? Wasn't that your major? And it's a pretty
yes.
big leap. I guess when you're a philosophy major, you've got to find, another kind of career too. And food is a great next step for philosophy majors.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the food business kind of really since I was 11. My dad was in the food business for a long, decades. He had a number of restaurants in Rhode Island. And I started working in kitchens when I was 11, and summers always meant having a job in some type of food service. And that went all the way up through college, working in kitchens. And then the summer before my senior year, I worked for George and Joanne at Al Forno.
Oh, you were at Al Forno.
Yeah, well, actually, I worked at Lucky's back when Al Forno's is two stories, and used to
Right.
be Al Forno's up top and Lucky's on the bottom. Now it's Al Forno on both floors, but Lucky's was on the bottom, and I worked at Lucky's in the kitchen, and that was my first taste of like a real kitchen, like a proper kitchen, being part of a team, a brigade, whatever you want to call it. And that's when I got the bug, and I finished college with a degree in philosophy, and went right from college to cooking culinary school. I went to the French Culinary Institute in Manhattan like a month after I graduated college. Started working in kitchens. I was going to school in the morning. I was working the Gotham Bar and Grill at night. And I just went from there, from Gotham Bar and Grill. I went on to work for Jean George, and that was an amazing fit. And I worked for him for about 5.5, 6 years. Then he
Those are some
became
pretty good apprenticeships that you had. I mean, between John George and George and Joanna at Al Forno and some of the other places that you've been with some of the great ones.
I mean, I was very lucky. I worked for some of the world's great chefs here in New York, and a little bit in France as well. And then after John George, I went off to Vegas for a bit, and I came back, and I worked with Jean-Louis Paladin briefly, which was a great experience.
Oh, really? Wow.
And then I was lucky enough to get a gig through my father, working for my father and a number of other people at 71 Clinton Fresh Food down on Clinton Street on Lower East Side. And then I sort of fell in love with that block and that neighborhood, and then that became WD-50 with John George as a partner in that, and we spent 13 years there. Lucky enough to open another restaurant for a bit called Alder, which didn't live to its full life, but the way WD did. Those two sort of ran their course, and then I got into the donut business for a while, which was super fun. My great grandfather was a baker, and so donuts were something that we enjoyed a lot as a kid. Also, New England is a hotbed for donuts, and so I was excited to do donuts for a bit, and then COVID sort of took the air out of that balloon. And while I was quarantined with 7 other people, I seemed the likely choice to feed the 8 of us, for those 6 or 7 months that we were quarantined. And I was in the basement one day, and I was looking around thinking, what can I feed everybody? And I remembered that I had a Breville pizza oven, electric pizza oven,
Oh, I
that
love that oven. I
that
have one
was
of
in the
those too.
basement. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was in the basement. I'd never used it. It was sitting in a box, and I thought, well, now wait a minute. That's a great way to feed 8 people, ages 4 to 50.
Yeah.
Everybody likes pizza. Asterisk, you've never really made pizza, Wiley. Other than, maybe a couple of times, but
What about
not.
at Al Forno? Did you ever get to make the grilled pizza there?
I did. I worked a grilled pizza station at Al Forno, but again, mind you, I was 17 and well, no, 19, I should say 20. And, I simply grilled the pizzas. I was so far and over my head. It was like just trying to stay afloat in a kitchen full of people that were truly professionals. This was my summer job.
Yeah.
George and Joanne were dear friends of my father's. They met working for him, and so they gave me a job. And so I was like, I could barely keep my head above water, but that was certainly where I got the bug. But I did not learn anything about pizza there,
Right.
other than how to grill it and dress it and move really fast. But I spent 6 months trying to teach myself how to make pizza dough, and I finally got to a place where I felt pretty good about it. And as the pandemic was coming down and it was time to figure out what was going to happen, I was like in the process of shutting down the donut shop. I had been dancing around with Gotti. We had been talking pre-pandemic about trying to figure out a way to do some sort of collaboration work together, because I live right around the corner from the original Breads.
Yeah, and that's a great bakery. For people who don't know, Breads is one of New York City's most beloved bakeries. They make a killer chocolate babka that
Yeah, the
is
babka is amazing.
yeah, as
Amazing.
well as the sourdough.
Yeah, it's great. We use it on one of our desserts at Stretch. But we had been talking about different things, and maybe it was going to be donuts, maybe it was going to be something with eggs, and we just couldn't find the right fit. And then when the pandemic sort of was winding down, and I was excited about pizza, and kind of was like, this is what I want to do. I miss restaurants. I miss cooking. I miss hospitality. I miss guest interaction. I miss working with the team. I miss everything. And so I ran over to Breads and I said, hey, Gotti, how about we do something around pizza? And he said, well, you don't really know how to make pizza. And so I ran home and I made a pizza, ran it back to him. And he was like, okay. I waited a couple of days. I made another pizza. And then he was either tired of me coming over with pizzas, or he liked it enough to take a chance. And so we did like a 6-month pop-up there, that was well received and a lot of fun. And we grew to really appreciate each other and decided that we wanted to grow this idea. And so a brick and mortar Stretch was born. We've built a team and brought on some other great people, and here we are.
Well, anyone who's seen the menu at Stretch or has been to Stretch knows that while it is a pizza restaurant, and the pizzas look like sort of your classic New York style pizzas, that it's still unconventional in a lot of respects, and that's partly because, and maybe greatly because, in your background, I'm going to backtrack a little bit again. Somehow in the course of your culinary training with all this classical formation that you had, you also were one of the early proponents of what we now call either modernist cooking or molecular gastronomy. You were doing this blending of science and culinary arts in a way that was uniquely your own, but was part of a movement that eventually manifested as WD50. And I think that's the restaurant that really put you on the global map.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I'm obviously super grateful for the opportunity and the time spent there. And I think that experience and that process trickles down to this day into Stretch. We're trying to make better pizza tomorrow than we did yesterday, and we're trying to understand everything that goes into making great pizza dough, and then we're using our 30 years of culinary experience to figure out what to put on top. And so hopefully those, as well as like you said, it's not just pizza. We have salads, we have hot and cold appetizers.
Yeah. I know the menus, on first glance, it's the classic menu. And on deeper glance, when you dive deeper, it's kind of like, classic menu, but with an extra twist. And I want to get into that with you, but I still want to go back a little bit, because making that leap from, you know, what you were doing with working, whether it was, I mean, the chefs you work with were all always stretching the bounds of what's possible in the kitchen. But what caused you to kind of dive all in on the molecular modernist approach? Because that wasn't, not that many people jumped on that.
Well, I mean, I was classically trained like, you know, all of my contemporaries, and, you know, we learned how to cook. We were taught how to cook. But I would say there was an element of our culinary education that was missing. You know, that we've all been told how to do something, but we haven't always been given why to do it that way. And there was a sense that some aspect of the traditional culinary training can be hollow at times, and that you can, you know, we've been making amazing food for centuries, if not millennia, right? We've been cooking wonderful, amazing, great food, but we haven't always understood why we're getting the results that we are, or if we want to modify those results or change those results or tweak those results, exactly the best way to do it. You know, and so I started asking, why are we doing it this way? And the traditional answers were, well, we've always done it. That's how we've always done it, or that's the way that works. Or
Right.
My absolute favorite is, you're doing it that way because I told you to do it that way.
Exactly. That sounds like the chef command. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, while, you know, for a young cook, I think those answers are probably okay. As you get to be a bit older and a bit more skilled, you would like to have a deeper level of understanding. And I think that that's a reasonable request. And so some of those, you know, the traditional educational format wasn't always able to do that. And so we had to sort of step back and say, well, wait a minute, what is cooking? You know, what are we doing here when we're cooking? And it turns out that the cooking is the science. And what science is it? Well, there's certainly some physics, there's certainly some biology, but mostly it's a lot of chemistry. There's a ton of chemistry. Now, that being said, we're not trained as chemists, we're not trained as scientists. So we realized, like the other people that have and continue to be curious and interested and involved in these types of movements, that we needed to go outside the kitchen to find these answers. And so it turns out that there are a lot of people out there that know a tremendous amount about food science, and many of whom are happy to provide answers. And so we began to develop relationships with food scientists, commercial food manufacturers, anyone that could help answer any kind of question. And so, you know, we opened, not just myself, but chefs around the world opened this beautiful, wonderful Pandora's box, where not only information, but new equipment and all sorts of stuff just started flooding in. And so we were able to really get and continue to have the opportunity to really understand what's happening to our food as we cook it. You know, with the belief, it's important to understand there's no right or wrong way to poach an egg, but there's a more or less informed way to poach an egg. The more you understand what happens to an egg when it poaches, the more you can modify the outcome to your particular desire. And so that's really what it was about.
And the ability to control the outcomes, I think, was such a big driving force on all that, to be able to say, if I cook at this temperature for exactly this amount of time, I'm going to have this result. It really was kind of mind-bending and mind-expanding for a lot of people who just thought, I just have to follow a recipe, and it works. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I mean, following a recipe is great, and there's no shame in that. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I think that I need to understand a bit more than that. I need more data than that. Like I'm pretty good at following a recipe, in fact, but I would like to know why I'm taking these particular steps. And how those steps affect the outcomes. And you know, you don't have to want to make crazy fanciful food. This is as equally useful to the bistro chef on the corner who would like a roast chicken that's moist and crispy skin, and haricots verts that are bright green, and mashed potatoes that aren't lumpy, and a béarnaise sauce that won't break. But if you don't understand the variables, then you're really you might roast a chicken 100 times, and 99 times it comes out the way you want. And for some reason today it didn't work, and you're not entirely sure why, you can't really troubleshoot it.
But there was this like wonderful window for lasted maybe about 20 years or so. Maybe Ferran Adria was one of the first people to kind of get, you know, note for this and being influential, and yourself and Grant Achatz and all sorts of other folks jumping in on this to expand this the possibilities of what you can do with food. And I'm wondering now that that halo period has ended, and you don't see as much of that happening, and yet its influence seems to have permeated into the culinary industry in ways that people don't really even talk about or don't understand what influence it really had, and again manifesting in a simple pizza operation like your new restaurant Stretch, that is, you're doing things there that you might not have ever thought of doing had you not been in the center of the hurricane of that earlier movement. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the easy way to criticize that movement and the route that most people take, which is, I think, misguided, unfortunately for them, is like, oh, I'm not into foam, or I'm not into this, or I'm not into gels. I'm not in. Well, that's fine, because that's not what the movement was about. The movement was about education. The movement was about learning how to cook, and that's never going to go away. Like, that's not done. I don't think you or me or anyone is prepared to say, okay, let's enough with the learning. Let's move on from that, and let's go back to the dark ages where we didn't know what we were doing and we're just sort of doing what had come before. No, 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 no. Learning is always going to be cool. Learning is always going to be in vogue, and that's not going to die. And so whether or not the stuff from the periphery or the sidebars, the things that we did live on or don't, and I think a lot of it still does live on. But what the real takeaway, the real value is that a group of us really opened the door to asking questions and learning, and continuing to create this knowledge, and for me, a process that has allowed me to take on something like pizza dough and try and make a really good pizza dough, because I fortunate enough to go to college and be educated and learn how to learn. And so now I'm applying that to just a different topic, whether it be donuts or pizza or making noodles out of shrimp. But you have to understand the ingredients you're working with and how they behave. Right. And you're pulling the levers, but if you don't know what pulling the levers does, then you don't know how to pull the levers. And learning is the cool part, and learning's here to stay. And that's the exciting part of the movement for me.
And the other part that I think was a big driving force in that movement is the quest for maximum flavor, for pure flavor, and ultimately flavor, I think, is what drives any restaurant business. Whoever presents the best flavor to the customers wins the game, if they've got a good solid business plan, and a cool place to go to. How is some of that learning and that quest for flavor manifesting now in Stretch? What are you applying from that? For instance, let's talk about your dough, your pizza dough. What are you doing with your dough that has been affected by the training and education that you've had?
We're best practices. We're trying to see what, there's a huge body of work that's come before us on how to make pizza dough. So we decided that we want to play in the New York pizza pool. I mean, that, I was quarantined, and I was making pizza in my Breville 12-inch pies, and I had to judge it against something. And the only pizza I was really that well versed in, was, having grown up in New York, was a New York pizza. So I was judging. I couldn't go anywhere. I was stuck at home. I couldn't go eat at other pizzerias to compare it. So I had to use my own life experiences. So I worked on trying to make a great New York dough. And that was about devouring all the information I could, reading your books and everybody else's books, in effort to understand what is the process of making pizza dough. And I started with something very simple. And I don't think that we're necessarily doing anything radically different than what other excellent careful, curious, interested pizza makers are doing. But we're just trying to be diligent about the variables and the opportunities for it to come off the rails. And I think a lot of that process was born, in the WD-50 kitchen.
So for people who maybe are just now catching up to what went on in the sort of this new pizza renaissance that we're all a part of, what are some of the things that you think are key? What are the key methods and tips that people should know about what delivers a great pizza dough?
I think you need to decide what you want, right, for your outcome. What kind of dough do you want to make? And then once you've decided that, wrapping your head around what some other great people have done. Because one of the nice things about the pizza community is it's pretty open. People are pretty wonderful about sharing what they've done.
Yeah.
Maybe not why they've done it, but at least what they've done.
Yeah.
And you can hopefully back into figuring out the how based on the why based on their how.
So you're focusing on your particular dough. So you're doing a kind of a New York style pizza dough. That was your taste memory that drove this. You're not doing a Naples Neapolitan style dough. You're not doing a Detroit style dough. You're doing New York dough. So real basic, like how did you decide what flour to use?
Well, that was the first thing we did was, we started using flour that Gotti had on hand. I started working with Gotti's, head baker, and he was helping me understand the different stuff while I was in tandem reading about what is it that I want, protein levels, ash levels, this, that, the other, stuff, and learning about that. And so we've gone through a ton of different flours. We use a couple different flours in our dough. Right now, we've got some a little bit of T85 that we blend in we use a King Arthur special patent flour that we like a lot. And again, understanding how protein levels affect gluten and this and that and mix times. But I think temperature is super important. Temperature of a lot of things. So every batch of dough we've ever made since we opened, we chart everything. We chart the flour temperature, the room temperature, the water temperature, obviously the mix time, and then the temperature off the hook when it's done mixing, so that we can then see if we have any issues or notice variables. And then we mess around with fermentation, cold fermentation, bulk fermentation, and we're playing with all those things and try in an effort to get better results tomorrow than we did yesterday. We've got a biga in our dough now, and then it was like, do we want to do a leash? Do we want to do a biga? Do we want to do a sourdough? What do we want to do? And what are we looking to get from those things? And how are we hoping that they'll contribute to our dough? And part of that was understanding what roles those ingredients play in pizza, so we can make decisions about which one we like and which one we want to use, and how we want to do it. How long do we want our biga to sit? How does that affect our dough production in the restaurants and this and that? So like when you come to WD50, pardon me, when you come to stretch right now, today you're going to be eating dough that's anywhere between 3 and 4 days sitting in the cooler, balled and fermenting. And again, I don't really know if you count the life of the biga as part of the day of the dough. I think you probably don't. I think you count the life of the dough when it's fully mixed. But yeah, we have a 3 or 4 day dough that we believe has some real nice flavor, some lightness, some structure, some crunch that plays well into a New York style pizza.
Well, these are the pizza geek questions that come up when I do, like at the pizza expos, I do a panel called Tinkering with Your Dough, and hundreds of people come to this panel because they all want to know, does a couple of hours of difference of fermentation really make a difference? Does overnight, really improve it? And how many days is too many, and et cetera. So this is really drilling down, to the heart of it, because there's so many opinions on this, but, and everybody who's got a wonderful product, has a different way of getting there. So it sounds like what you're saying is that you've identified somewhere 3 to 5 days of a process to get the dough that you want. What does that extra time do for your dough that adds value?
I think it gives it some really nice flavor. It gives it some incredible texture. It gives it some extensibility in a way that we find very helpful. We're constantly trying, like I said, to make better dough tomorrow than we did yesterday, but also fit it into our schedule. Having a walk-in that allows you to hold dough for 4 days is not an easy thing. That's a lot of space. So we were originally using 48-hour dough, and now we're all the way up to 72/96. And so we love our dough at 48, but we like our dough even more in the 3 to 4 day window. But is there a way that we can shorten the cold ferment, the bald cold ferment time, and we're playing with that. We're tweaking. We're wondering, you know, can a 20? We do a 16-hour biga. Could a 48-hour biga, which is a much smaller footprint, buy us less, you know, less cold fermentation time on the back end, so that we have
Right.
more space in our walk-in and can move our dough faster? And we don't have the answers to all those answers yet, because we're still conducting experiments,
So this is a work in
still playing
progress
with
still.
it. Yeah, we've got a Sicilian on the menu, and in the last 2 weeks, we feel like we made some real, maybe 3 weeks, we made some real improvements on the quality of our Sicilian by, again, adjusting and lengthening our fermentation times at room temperature versus in the refrigerator, which is different than how we ferment our round pies, which is mostly cold fermentation. And so we're still pretty young, but we're excited, we're eager, we're enthusiastic, we're curious, and we're hoping that gives us an ability to make a solid pie. And then we do have some 30 years of experience putting things on the top, so that is maybe a little bit of a competitive advantage that we have, is that we've been cooking things for a long time, and
Yeah.
so the top is a fun place for us to play as well.
Yeah, you do a lot of really inventive, creative stuff on top of the pizza. I know one thing I noticed is, you know, sort of a focus on crunch factor. Is crunch a big important thing for you in terms of your culinary delivery system?
Yes, texture has always played heavily into the food that we make, and that goes back, you know, 25, 30 years, because there is certainly a lot of interesting things that happen within the mouth and the brain when you're perceiving crunch and texture. And there's a lot of really interesting scientific data to support that as you crunch on things, it can enhance your enjoyment of those things. So yeah, we do like, we put fun stuff like, you know, tempura crumbs on top of pizza to get some crunch, because we think that not only is that fun and playful, but it's also a value add in terms of the experience of the diner.
And you've gotten a lot of positive buzz for your potato chip salad, you know, or salad with potato chips. And potato chips again I think potato chips are having their moment again. You know, it's like it went from just being an everyday thing that now all of a sudden everyone's realizing, wow, potato chips can add a lot of flavor and texture value to high-end foods.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fun one too. We make our own blend. You know, we make a salt and vinegar chip, and we take plain potato chips that we then season with our own, you know, homemade blend of vinegars, white vinegars, and various acids to make a salt and vinegar chip. And then we toss that in with a bunch of different greens and herbs and radishes. But we just dress the whole thing in olive oil. So we don't dress it with vinegar, because the vinegar comes in the form of the powder, so that the salad doesn't actually make the chips soggy.
That's
so that
interesting.
salad can sit on the table for literally hours without the chips getting soggy, because everything's just dressed in olive oil.
That's the first thought that came to my mind. Is how do you keep the chip from getting soggy when you put a salad dressing on it? And this is again where your background in understanding science and creating what would say a vinegar powder. Is that what you use?
Yeah, we make our own, but I mean, again, salt and vinegar chips have been around for a long time,
Yeah.
and that's fun, and realizing that we could incorporate that into a salad with a bunch of really great bitter, sweet, salty, umami vegetables, and bring in some crunch from not only that, but from sliced raw radishes, dried limes. There's a lot of different textures and flavors happening there that hopefully can make you smile, as well as taste great.
Well, I saw on the menu, one of your apps, you've got some kind of a dipping stick with a stretch sauce, and I'm curious, what is stretch sauce, and what is it that we're dipping? Is it a chickpea?
It's like a panisse, like a classic French panisse that I learned how to make from John George, which is like kind of like polenta, but instead of making it with cornmeal, you make it with chickpea flour. And we make a puree of basil and sour cream, almost like a pesto, but with a little bit of dairy in there. And we fold that into the chickpea batter.
Is it kind of like a French version of a falafel?
It's sort of like a falafel. Falafel's a bit crumblier. And this is, it's pretty smooth. You make like a like a polenta. It's really
Yeah.
closer in style to a polenta, and we pour it out. And much like when polenta is cool, you can cut it into shapes and
Oh
fry
yeah,
it.
yeah.
The chickpea batter cools, and we cut them into little bars, and we fry those bars, and we serve them with what we call stretch sauce, which has roasted peppers and Calabrian chilies and some dairy, some mayonnaise, some maple syrup, a bunch of stuff blended together, and it's this really great bright orange sauce that is. We have a bunch of sauces that we're pretty excited about, from a white halal sauce to a smoked, to a charred scallion ranch, to green goddess, to a classic red sauce, all different sauces that we feel like go well with the pizzas, because we're, you know what it's like, Peter, when people just leave the crust, right? And you have this giant boneyard on the table. And so we figured we people a bowl of, or a row of dipping sauces, and we can get them to eat the crust a little bit more. And it's proven to be something that people have gotten excited about, getting the dipping sauces and eating those.
I love it.
And we see the boneyard go down.
We saw, yeah, I know it began with, like a lot of pizzerias putting a little honey on the table so you could dip your bones in the honey. But I love the idea of having three sauces and each sauce gives a whole other flavor profile, so that you're getting a lot of flavor experience from just a few pizza crust, bones. There's some other interesting things I noticed on the pizza menu. You were getting, I think, a lot of positive feedback on a pizza you call the Nelly.
Yep.
That's the one with the shallots? And is that like the shallots 3 ways on top of a pizza?
Yep, it's roasted shallots, it's pickled shallots, and it's fried shallots. That was, again, sort of looking backwards in an effort to go forwards. It was a very traditional thing growing up in a French kitchen, where they would say, let's do celery root 3 ways, or let's do cauliflower 3 ways, or let's do duck 3 ways.
Yeah.
Or not only 3, but let's do multiple presentations of a given vegetable or of a given protein. And so we're just applying that to the pizza, and I made that one day at home for my family, who's sort of they're some of the early beta testers, and our younger daughter, whose middle name is Nell, she really liked that pizza. And I said, her first name is Ellery. I said, Ellery, I'd love to put the shallot pie on the menu. And she said, great. What are we going to call it? I said, well, you pick the name. And she said, can we call it the Nelly? And I said, we sure can. And so it's named after her. And that's the pie she gets every time when she comes in. She always says,
yes.
It's funny because it's named after her, but when she comes in, she always orders, can I get a shallot pie, Dad? Can I get a shallot pizza? She never says the Nelly.
But it's funny.
It's Nelly, and
it's funny that I noticed this
it's
around
fun
the country.
to get roasted shallots, again, pickled shallots and fried shallots. So there's a lot of texture, some sweet, some salty, crunchy, and again, I think it's fun.
And onions and shallots are what's the word? A little valued and understood ingredient that are beginning to find themselves, as front and center product, items, onion pizzas. And there's just so many things you can do with them. But I've also noticed around the country, so many pizza operators have a pizza on the menu named after one of their kids, and so the kid, and maybe in the long run, it's a way that the kid will eventually, like take over when you're ready to retire. Who knows? But it reminds me when you were talking about growing up in a restaurant family, or was there a time when, as a kid, you were working because you had to work in the family business, but thought to yourself, I'm never going to do this. When I go to college, I'm going to study something else and go a different direction? Or did you always feel like food is going to be my life?
I always, I loved it. Summer, like I said, my summers were spent working in kitchens, and they were always great. It always gave me some, walking around money to put in my pocket. And then when I got to college, I needed some cash. So getting, jobs on campus, working in food service. I was I worked at the campus pub, and eventually became a student manager there. I worked in one of the dining halls at college, and I always loved it. But it wasn't until that job at Al Forno that it really was like, oh, I like this. I like everything about this, so much that I want to try this as a career. It wasn't, that was a real aha moment for me.
Yeah, that's when the lights went on.
Yeah, there was so much about kitchen life that I loved. Kitchens are like sports, and I think in wonderful ways. Like if you're into sports, if you're into team sports, there's a lot of lessons to be learned. It's highly redemptive. You strike out, you miss a layup, you overcook a piece of fish, you screw something up, but you're going to keep doing it. You can't dwell on it. You're going to have to do 100 more of these or 20 more of those. And there was a lot of like being on a team that I loved as a child, and then being in a kitchen, a brigade. You had sous chefs, and you had captains and managers, and you go to practice, and you have prep, and then you have dinner service, and you have a game. And there was just so much. I was like, wow, I'm never going to be good enough to be a professional athlete, but I might be good enough to be a cook. And so a bug, the hook was in, and I went for it. And I just loved it. I really loved it, and I continue to love it. And it's just, it's a wonderful thing being part of the restaurant community and
you really
hospitality.
Very beautifully just described, I think, what it is that's so magnetic and appealing to so many young people whose families are probably going, no, you don't want to do that. Make a living, be a lawyer. You're gonna work really hard and never make any money, but there's something so compelling about working in the restaurant industry or in the food service industry that draws people. There's got to be something that's making it compelling to be willing to sacrifice, the possibility of some other kind of career. And I think what you just described, the drama of it, the camaraderie, the teamwork, everything and then the other thing you mentioned earlier, the never-ending learning process that feeds that hunger that we have to, always be learning something. And I would never have had any interest in pursuing anything with science, except that I had to know science to be able to make good bread. And so bread was what opened up the world of science to me. I don't know if it was like that for you, or if you had a scientific bent before you got into it, but it gave me a reason why. I think that's what I'm trying to say, is that cooking is the why that kind of drives everything else that I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think by nature, maybe I'm a curious person, and I needed to find a place for my curiosity to live. And when I realized that I could feed my brain, and I could also feed the rest of me, like mentally and physically, and through a kitchen, it was wonderful. I mean, I think it's a great place to be, to make not a whole lot of money. No, I'm just kidding. It's
that's the trade-off.
No, I'm not trying.
Once in a while, somebody makes some money at it, but that's the dream.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I love working in restaurants. I love cooking for people. I love the people I work with. I love the people I cook for, and it's a great, it's not a perfect system. It's not a perfect world. It's not a perfect business, but it's full of people that are passionate and enthusiastic and excited, and warm and decent. And so I feel very lucky to have found something early on in my life that I like to do. I feel very, very fortunate.
Exactly. And it checks off so many boxes for our needs, for our human needs, to have a reason to do things. Before we run out of time,
I'll never learn everything, it's an endless opportunity. There's no chance I'll learn everything there is to learn about cooking. I'll be lucky to learn a little bit about pizza before I die,
Well, we're excited that you're doing it, that you're learning and delivering to us, sort of a new take on this. Before we run out of time, could you just describe for, our listeners, number one, where you're located, where Stretch is located, and so some other items on the menu that maybe, you'd like to just sort of call out as something that they may want to try when they come in?
Sure. Thank you. What Stretch Pizza?
Yeah.
We're at 331 Park Avenue South, located in New York City, Manhattan. We're between 24 and 25 on the east side of Park Avenue. And we have about a dozen different pies that we'd love for you to come and try. We have a couple of different square Sicilians as well on top of that. And then we have, as you mentioned, some fun appetizers and veg items. We have a potato chip salad. We have a Caesar salad we're proud of. We always have one or two crudos, raw cured fishes on the menu.
Oh, nice.
We have our chickpea fries that you mentioned with our stretch sauce. We do a garlic bread that we're pretty proud of. We use the same pizza dough for all of our different things. So we have one dough that we try to do as many different things with as we can, and that's a lot
You
of fun.
use your own dough for the garlic bread? You make your garlic bread out of your dough.
Yep.
You're not buying it from Bread's Bakery or anything like that?
No, but as you mentioned, breads, we have a soft serve. The only
Oh,
two
yeah.
desserts we have are chocolate chip cookies. We have really tiny chocolate chip cookies, and we have two kinds of soft serve. And the soft serve changes, one flavor changes every month or so, and the other one stays the same. And it's a banana soft serve with a peanut butter shell. And we take some of that delicious babka from breads and we chop it up and we dry it in the oven a little bit. And so it's, again, texturally, it's the cold banana, creamy soft banana with the hard peanut butter shell, and then this sort of cakey cookie, hazelnutty, chocolatey crumble.
I saw a photo of that dessert. I haven't been up to New York City since you opened, so I haven't had it. But I saw a photo of that dessert, and I immediately was like wanting to get on a plane and just dive into that. Are you using, when you make your ice cream, your soft serve? Are you using any modernist techniques for that, or is it just a classic sort of ice cream machine? What are you applying to from your past that is showing up in this dessert?
Well, I mean, soft serve is an interesting form of ice cream. It does have some of those ingredients that are from my past. There are some milk powders and maybe some xanthan gum or some things in there that act as sort of stabilizers in ice cream that you don't always see in hard pack ice cream. And so I think an understanding of some of those ingredients and how they behave from my past life has hopefully allowed us to make tasty ice creams in store now.
I'm imagining that it's just smooth and creamy as can be. And why banana? Why is banana sort of the heart of that flavor?
We were working, we have an ice cream machine that can has two hoppers, so we can do two flavors. So we thought, well, do we do one so we can make a lot of one flavor, or do we have two? And during Friends and Family, we were trying different flavors, and peanut butter and banana and the babka and Elvis, and I don't know, it sounded there's no bacon, but it sounded fun, and we did it, and I really like the idea of a nod to my partner, because I think that's important that we celebrate what he does and all the great stuff that he has done and continues to do, and our tie to that. And we did a pop-up. The pop-up happened there. The head baker helped us with our pizza then, and I think it would be, I'd feel it like it was an incomplete part of the story not to constantly tip our hat to that relationship, and without them, who's to say we'd be as far along as we are? And so, I'm grateful for that, and so I think for me, that's an important thing. And banana, just, I don't know, peanut butter and banana are good friends. Whether they're old friends, I can't really say. And the funny thing about it is that, banana is very polarizing, but it's still 9 times out of 10 sells more than the flavor next to it, except when we put vanilla in there. Vanilla is always, and will always be the king, but otherwise banana does pretty well.
That's cool. Well, I can't wait to come in and try it. Well, are you open for lunch and dinner, and how late?
Yep, we're open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week. And then Fridays and Saturdays, we're open till 10 p.m. We start 11:30 every day till 10 p.m., except Fridays and Saturdays till 11.
Do people need reservations? Can they call ahead and order something before they come in? And are you doing anything in a box?
We will be starting delivery very soon.
Oh, good.
We currently do pickup, and we obviously in-store dining. You can come. We have seats at the bar if you want to just walk in. We take reservations if you want to do that. We do lots of private events. We had a wild and crazy, wonderful wedding party that came right from I don't know if it was the chapel or City Hall or wherever on Saturday night, and they were on Sunday night. I'm sorry, they were a ton of fun. And that was great. That was the first time for us. But yeah, we do it all. So and
I see you got lots of pizza boxes up on the wall is it from the collection of our friend Scott Wiener, is that part of his collection, or are these your own boxes up there?
The pizza boxes are all from Scott. Yep, that's his curated.
So for those who have been following us know that Scott has the Guinness World Record of collection of pizza boxes. So I'm glad he's found a gallery in New York City to showcase these works of art, really, and on the wall at Stretch Pizza.
Yeah, I mean, he's a true he's, he's obviously probably the greatest pizza historian around, and as well as just an awesome human being. And being able to have like you said, a gallery we can show some of his collection has been a great honor for us.
Well, it's exciting because like I say, it's checking off so many boxes, but ultimately, coming to a head through pizza, which of course is why so many people are on their own pizza quests, because there's something about pizza that just again touches a nerve, and we all love it. And so many white tablecloth chefs from the highest end are all just as equally obsessed with pizza, I think, as you and I are. And so there's got to be something about it that works. And I'm glad that you've put some of your creative energy into it as well. So
yeah, it's been
thanks so much.
Super fun to go from a place that people can go to once a year to maybe once a week. That's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Wylie Dufresne, thank you for being on Pizza Quest today, for sharing your story, your journey. We wish you the best of success at Stretch. I can't wait to get back up to New York City, and I'll give you a heads up before I come, because I don't want to get caught in the lines. But
it's been an honor. Thank you so much.
And again, for those of you who are watching, Stretch Pizza, just give us the address one more time, and then look up their website, and you can get the whole menu and everything there. But address again?
Stretch Pizza, 331 Park Avenue South in New York City, Manhattan.
Okay, so Park Avenue South. We will see you again. I'll see you in New York. Hopefully, I'll see all of you on the next episode of Pizza Quest. And again, Wylie Dufresne, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. A real honor.